Hello everybody, I am Ben from Team Panic, and in front of me sits the cheap Chinese CNC machine. I think this is the 2417T. So I've done a couple of videos on this on the channel already, and now I've actually used it properly. I've used it to cut robot parts for a video that's coming out later in the channel. I don't know when exactly right now, but this guy has been used a couple of times, so I am going to kind of do my final thoughts on it and do some tips and tricks and some issues with it. So first of all, I will say I do have the parts down in front of me here. These two, in actual fact, are the two parts that I've cut. They are identical pieces, but they will be used in an upcoming robot, and they've actually come out pretty well. I had gone out and got some laser cut acrylic, which wouldn't work in the robot because acrylic is just acrylic and very brittle, but I held the acrylic up to these two pieces and all of the pieces matched exactly, which means that this little CNC machine is actually producing parts that work and actually the right size and shape and dimension and all of that kind of stuff, which is really good because that means I didn't have to do anything major to do that. I built the thing, put on the firmware that I was given for it, and let it go, and it's producing accurate parts, which is phenomenal, really, for something that's this cheap and came from China. I wasn't really expecting that too much. So I'm going to start with some tips and tricks to start with, and then we're going to talk about the issues that I've had with this, and yeah, we'll go from there. So to start with, a lot of these things are going to be really basic to you if you've ever CNC'd before. Personally, I had not CNC'd before, so these are just some things that I was going to prep people on. So first and foremost, you need a waste board on your CNC machine. I've just got some 3mm MDF under here, which I am using to sit underneath all of the parts that I cut, which means that the aluminium doesn't get hit and doesn't kill the motor up here when the spindle hits that. Also, you are going to need to get some other stuff for your machine. This thing comes with a couple of engraving bits, a little like V-shaped bits. They are not good for cutting in any way, shape or form. In the actual CNC machine at the moment, down over here, I have a 1mm flute bit, which is designed for cutting this type of plastic that I'm cutting. And I also have another kind of 3mm rough cut bit as well that I use or will use. I haven't actually used this one yet because I haven't needed to, because I've had some holes that have been too small for it. Yeah, but you will need cutting bits. You will need proper, actual, good cutting bits for it. And then finally, you'll need clamps. So I have some failed cuts here, and one of those fails is from not clamping down the workpiece properly. I just used some screws and some washers, and that did not hold anything down correctly. So then I did what anybody with a 3D printer does. I checked Thingiverse to see what I could find, and I did find some really nice looking clamps, and I printed these out well enough that they would actually hold down a workpiece. However, most of the things you can find on Thingiverse are ginormous. This piece here is like a fourth of the workbench of this entire machine, which means by using that one clamp, you cut down the workpiece just like crazy. It's just ridiculous. It's huge, and a lot of these things are like that because they're designed to go on much bigger CNC machines than this. So I found a very small little CNC clamp, and I reproduced it because the one that was there was using 3mm bolts. I'm using 5mm so that I can bolt directly into the T-slot of the bottom of the bed here, and I also thickened it out so that it would actually work and not break when I did this. I will put these files up on Thingiverse. When you print these yourself, you want to be printing kind of 6 to 8 perimeters at the very least, and you also want to be putting in kind of 40% plus infill. Basically, the more plastic you pack into this thing, the better, because that's what's going to be holding down your workpiece. Now, having said that, when I swapped over to using these rather than washers, I have had no issues with workpieces coming undone yet. So that's a good start. Yeah, so that's my tips and tricks. So those are the things you're going to need to get this machine working. Baseboard, new cutting pieces, and actual proper clamps to hold everything down. Admittedly, these probably aren't going to last very well, but they are 3D printed, and I can print a set of those in a couple of hours, and it's no real big deal. So the failures that I had and the problems this machine has. The problems which there are a couple, all stem from the same thing. This machine vibrates like absolute crazy. I'm going to cut to a clip here, and I apologize in advance. This is going to be loud, unedited, raw audio from this machine. It vibrates like crazy, and it is loud when it does it. So here we go. Here's a clip. So as you saw and heard in that clip, this machine vibrates like crazy. Now, I'm not sure if that's because I've put it together incorrectly or because the tip of this cutting bit here is so far down that it's putting lots of force and torque on the machine. I really don't know what's causing all of those vibrations. I've literally had to clamp this machine down to my workbench to stop it from literally sliding back and forth as it vibrates that much. So that's a big problem, and it causes other issues too. So the other issues are that the nuts keep coming undone, or have at least a couple of them have come undone going around this machine. So it started with the Z-axis motor up here, coupler. This coupling had lost one of its grub screws first, which wasn't great, but it did actually manage to power through that. Second, I lost a grub screw on the X-axis over here, which was not good because then the X-axis could not move back and forth, and it meant that it was attempting just to cut in place. And then finally, and most worryingly of all, halfway through a print or halfway through a cut, this cutting bit came out of the actual machine. And yeah, I'm assuming that's because the grub screws holding that piece in came loose. And that is not a good thing at all. That led to a very, very annoying failure on this machine, and I don't know if there's anything I can do about that. Of course, you could add Loctite to all of the screws and grub screws and everything in here. The problem with that, especially for the cutting bit, is that if you add Loctite to that cutting bit, then you're it's going to be really hard to swap cutting bits over, which, you know, it's something that I want to be doing with this machine in the future. So that's kind of the major issues. The secondary issue with this is because there is no vacuum and no extraction and no brushes or anything on this machine, it gets dusty and dirty really, really quickly. I was cutting HDPE, that's what this stuff is over here, and it just spread dust and particles of HDPE everywhere. This machine has been moved from where I originally used it, but it is still just dirty as all, and I'm going to have to clean that up before I move it again, because otherwise it is going to spread particles of HDPE all over my house, which is, yeah, not something that I'm looking forward to cleaning up. Yeah, so there you go. Some final thoughts. I think I'll close out by answering a couple of questions that have kind of come up again and again from people about this machine. Can it cut or engrave metal? No, I don't think so. Because it vibrates that much cutting HDPE or whatever this is actually cutting board, and I'm not sure that these boards are full HDPE. It vibrates as much as it did cutting plastic. I think trying to cut or engrave metal, and this thing is probably going to shake itself to pieces. It's just mental. Like, I thought at the beginning that it probably wouldn't be able to do it because it does have 3D printed parts, and I thought that if you were going to try and put that much torque on a 3D printed part, it's just going to break the part. But now that I've seen it in action, seen the vibration that happens when it's running, I am pretty confident that it's not going to cut or engrave metal in any way, shape or form. For the stuff that I'm doing with the plastic, it's actually pretty decent. It's worked pretty well so far, but I would not recommend this machine if you want to be cutting aluminium or brass or steel or anything like that. It's just not that machine. And then also the source files for everything, I linked them in the last video. Some people were having trouble with that, and I am not just going to be emailing people individually. If enough people keep asking for it, I might try and find a way of like hosting it on GitHub or on Dropbox or something, but I'm not going to be sending out individual emails just because that's going to be too much work for me to get done, and I've got lots of robots to build. Yeah. So like I said, I think that's going to be my final thoughts on this machine. You guys aren't going to see me do a dedicated video on this ever again, I don't think. I'm going to be using this in the future for multiple robot projects. As I said, these bits here are for a project that is coming up probably 2 to 3 weeks away at this point. We'll see how that all goes. There's some parts that I'm still trying to get in at the moment, so that video, I don't know how long away it is. Yeah, so you'll see it around to do that type of things and to cut things and to, you know, be a tool on my channel, but I'm never going to do a full video on this machine again. So yeah, there you go. Hopefully you've enjoyed that one. Hopefully it's helped out some of you out there. Either make the choice to buy this or find the things that you need to get it running correctly. Yeah, and I will see you in the next video.